On January 13th, the NBA released the second return for the All-Star Game, a collection of 40 players who have acquired the most fan votes dating back to Christmas Day. So far, the leader in votes this year is Stephen Curry. Not only is arguably the most popular player, but possibly the best. However, he's not the only one currently battling for that title. Durant, Giannis, LeBron, and Jokic all have legitimate resumes to be in that conversation as well. Unsurprisingly, they find themselves here too. And the starters are as follows. Based upon what we could see here, I'm willing to guess that all of us agreed that this list is pretty accurate. Well, minus one spot, which, yeah, I have an issue with, but you know what, it's fine. The rest of the list won't reflect this, right? You gotta be kidding me. Now, don't get me wrong, I absolutely love the fact that fans get to vote, but this is just not right. Klay Thompson recently made his incredible return to basketball after nearly 2.5 years recovering from injuries. But you can't tell me he deserves an all-star spot over Devin Booker or Donovan Mitchell. Yet despite what is here, this isn't the craziest all-star incident, and not even by a long shot. In a year before players and media were able to vote, a select group of fans almost single-handedly elected Zaza Pachulia an all-star starter. Let me repeat that. A man who averaged 6 points a game almost started in the all-star game. 6 points. Back to what my original point was. There's a lot I could say here based upon my own subjective point of view. Today, let's do something a bit different. Selecting the 24 most deserving All-Stars based on stats, raw numbers. A method I picked up from a very well-known YouTuber you might know. One that avoids narratives and memes. So, let's get into it. Now, before we begin, we must establish some rules. To evaluate each player's performance, we'll be judging each one based on 10 different categories. The top 24 will receive a score. The higher you place, the more points you receive. Simple as that. Also, players must qualify for their respective leaderboards or at least be on pace to, meaning they will have to have played a certain amount of games. Also, I'd like to test to see how metrics filter out players who don't necessarily qualify as all-star candidates, so everyone will be incorporated in this process. Here are the categories. Overall, I believe each of these touch on every portion of what separates an elite player from his counterparts, at least from a statistical standpoint. Basic stats such as points per game, efficiency, impact on both sides of the ball, their impact on winning, and other important variables we must consider. 9 of which you see before you, and one mystery category that will be revealed later on. Once all the numbers are added up, the 24 players with the most points will be all-stars. Of that group, the top 10 will be named starters. To kick it off, we have everyone's favorite stat, points per game. And at the top of the list, we have none other than Kevin Durant, who at this moment looks well on his way to acquiring his 5th scoring title, further solidifying his spot as one of the greatest scorers to ever play. LeBron follows him at number 2 at 28.6 points per game, an astonishing amount for a 37-year-old in his 19th season. Coming in 3rd is Trae Young. Moving on to rebounds per game, and here Rudy Gobert currently holds the top spot, followed by Nikola Jokic and Clint Capella, who make up the top 3. From there we transition to a more flashy category, assists per game, and at number 1 is none other than the point god, Chris Paul, the only player averaging double-digit in this stat. However, James Harden and Trae Young follow not too far behind him. Fun fact, Nikola Jokic is the only true center to crack the top 24 on this list, displaying his versatility as the best center in the NBA. Next up, we have more advanced categories. Win shares per 48 is one of the best at quantifying a player's impact on the floor, or more specifically, their impact on winning. Rudy Gobert finds himself at number 1 for the 2nd time, showing just how vital he is to Utah's current success. Giannis takes the 2nd spot, followed by a tie for 3rd between the Joker and Jimmy Butler. Here is another advanced metric that shows a player's impact, box plus minus. This is not a perfect stat by any means, but nonetheless showcases what we're looking for. Nikola Jokic unsurprisingly wears the crown in this category, boasting a plus minus that outclasses everyone else on this list. 3 points ahead of Giannis and nearly 5 points to Jimmy Butler. Defensive rating may seem like an ironic category for determining all-stars, given in the actual game there is hardly any defense until the very end. Draymond is number 1, just a half a point ahead of Rudy Gobert, who appear to be in a 3-man race for Defensive Player of the Year. Oh, and Kevon Looney is here too. Next up is the all-intriguing PER stat, and once again the Joker finds himself here at the top, who at the current moment is efficiency-wise putting up not just the best season this year, but the best we've ever seen by a player in NBA history. Giannis joins him as the only other player to crack 30, and Joel Embiid comes in at number 3. Value over replacement is great when measuring just how good a player is to their average counterpart. To put it simply, it separates who are the best. And what's becoming a repetitive statement, Jokic is the best again. If this doesn't convince you Jokic is deserving of an MVP consideration, then I don't know what will. The Greek Freak continues to establish his presence, taking home the silver, and the greatest shooter to ever play the game in Steph Curry wears the bronze. This next list shows the first 24 players that recorded a marquee performance this year. Each game is calculating using this equation, which is currently the best available way to measure it. Also, players who have multiple performances worthy of falling on this list earned extra points. And can you guess who topped it all off?
Step back, 4-2, and it's good. Portland. Runner by Trey. Out to Trey. He'll take a long one from the hash mark and connect. Blazers by 10. Trey, a deep 3. Good.
This is just a poor switch there. That's
Trey.
A switch.
Oh!
It's just a terrible shot.
And Capella. Trey dancing around, gets to the rim.
Something's wrong.
Trey comes off and hits another one for 53. Gonna get one more shot at it. And banks it in.
Despite the fact his team lost, Trae Young put on one of the greatest offensive performances we've ever seen by an individual player. The only time in NBA history a player had 55 points and 14 assists in the same game, which gave him a whopping 39.9 rating. Stephen Curry's near 50-point triple-double, ironically against the Hawks, is second, and Kevin Durant's cool 51-point performance round out the top 3. Interestingly enough, there are 4 players on this list that haven't been selected to an All-Star game previously, showing that on any given day, a player can have a game that ranks among the best. Lastly is the mystery category. I felt it was appropriate to incorporate a stat that includes a player's fame in the current basketball world, since this is kind of a popularity contest. Behold, the popularity category. While unfortunately I don't have access to jersey sales for the current year, I was able to use another form of measurement. If you don't already know, the NBA displays the most sold items on a list for their shop. From here, I went in and counted the number of items the top 24 players have within the first 250 items or so. A very time-consuming way to go about this, but nonetheless effective. From there, we got these results. LeBron takes the top spot for the first time in this entire experiment with 20 items, far ahead of Jason Tatum with just 12. From there, Luka and Durant hold the third spot with 10 apiece. With that, we conclude our process. And can you guess who placed number 1 out of all players? Unless you skipped any part of this video, you very well know who it is.
He's on an MVP level right now. Look at that. Look at that by Jokic. The slip to Jokic all the way.
How superlative has Nikola Jokic been turned?
Tough shot. Oh, my.
Oh, boy. Look at the Joker. And that's no joke.
Nice pass. A gifted pass.
Oh, what a touch pass. That's beautiful offense.
As Jokic spins it up and in, and Nikola Jokic is on fire.
Nikola Jokic, to literally no one's surprise, leads it all, accounting for 200 total points. who, may I add, placed first in 3 separate categories. And second is Giannis, who had 191. These two were absolutely dominant. Of all 84 players that received a single point, they were the only 2 to place in every single stat we covered. As a result, they were far above Joel Embiid, who accumulated just 163. From there, the starters are as follows: LeBron James, Kevin Durant, Steph Curry, and Trae Young all place a spot in the top 7. Not unusual from what we initially thought. What I did not expect was Rudy Gobert to place as high as he did, coming in at an 8th. Ultimately, it's unlikely he starts in the real game. However, this shows the overall lack of recognition for just how impactful he's been for his team. Finally, Jimmy places at number 9, with Ja Morant taking the last spot, who won in large part due to his team having the better record than the Cavs with Jarrett Allen. The reserves also remain relatively consistent with a few key outliers. DeAndre Ayton gets a shine on the All-Star team, establishing dominance in just 4 categories to accumulate enough points to warrant his first response. Montrezl Harrell is the 6th man for an average Wizards team, but shines through with his efficiency and impact on the floor, resulting in his first All-Star nod. This is a very good selection of players. It's difficult to argue that each of them doesn't have at least an argument to be named an All-Star. What's more surprising is who fell short. DeMar DeRozan and Zach LaVine are 2 players who have more than guaranteed themselves a spot in this year's game. Yet statistically, they fell short of making the cut here. The same can be said for Paul George, despite the fact he is currently 4th in all votes for the West frontcourt. LaMelo Ball is another player you'd expect to be in Cleveland come February, but didn't even make the snubs list. Now, that wraps up most of what we need to cover, but we still need to do one thing. The current format doesn't elect the top 24 players chosen. It takes the best 12 from each conference. And if you were counting, that number here is skewed in favor of the West, 13 to 11. In addition, starting lineups only have 3 frontcourt spots. In other words, we need to make some adjustments. James Harden is moved into the starting lineup, with Butler subsequently falling to the bench. Finally, do we see DeMar DeRozan make the team with Van Vliet alongside him, occupying the 2 missing backcourt spots for the East. Unfortunately, this also means Donovan Mitchell and Jason Tatum receive the short end of the stick and are left off the team entirely. Whichever way you put it, here are your 12 All-Stars from each conference. Stats are great. They allow us to quantify a player's performance and impact, making it easy for us to understand. But at the same time, they don't tell the whole story. This list isn't perfect. No number could truly quantify just how impactful DeMar DeRozan has been for the Chicago Bulls. No stat could show what Devin Booker's scoring means to the Phoenix Suns. I mean, heck, Andrew Wiggins registered just 4 points in the entire experiment, yet it's a real possibility he gets his first selection. DeJounte Murray is a guy that both the stats and myself agree should get a spot over him. However, he'll miss the list for a reason so many have prior. His team isn't winning enough games. The All-Star game doesn't always represent what we each personally feel reflect the best. Inevitably, a few will fall short of the cut regardless of how you put it. That just shows the amount of talent we see in today's game. Despite that fact, we were able to create an all-star roster based purely on stats, raw data, numbers, one that might very well reflect what we'll see when the final votes come in. In the end, the fan vote is as much popularity as it is giving recognition to those who deserve it, and that's perfectly okay. From this, I hope you're able to take away a greater appreciation for those players who perform just as well in areas not seen in the headlines as those that do. With that being said, thank you all for watching, and I hope to talk to you all next time.